Hey, this is Rodney with the Rod Shop, and in this video we're going to be adjusting the valves on the 1981 CM 400 Honda with a twin engine. Now this will cover from 1978 to 1987 400s and 450 twin engines on the Hondas. That's like the CM 400, CB 400, the CB 450, CB 450 SC, the Nighthawks. I'll put a list of all the models that this does cover down in the description. But if it's between that year 78 to 87 400 450 twin, then the specs are going to be the same procedure. What you'll want to do is you're going to have to pull the gas tank, or we'll actually start with pulling the seat off and pull the gas tank off, and depending on the model there's like a little clip that's coming off either the coil or the frame right above the valve cover that either retains the spark plug wire or a vacuum line, or just some clip of some kind you'll have to either loosen or to remove so you can get enough room to lift the valve cover up and slide it off. But you'll see in the video on how to do this. In order to do this, we'll have to remove the seat and the tank. Valve cover is already off. We're checking the battery, but needs the valves adjusted, so we're going to pull off the tank and the seat and get to the valve cover. If you're unsure how to remove the seat, it's just got two levers, one on each side. It releases the seat, you pick up the back, pull it off. Didn't actually record unscrewing the bolt, but it's just one 12mm head bolt to remove right there. And you can see in this picture, and that's what sets the tank free so you can pull it off its little pedestals. This also be a good time to check your air filter. So now we've turned the fuel off, and then we're going to take the fuel line loose off the carburetors, then lift the tank off. The front of the tank has little notches that catches on this rubber, and it has a 12mm bolt that you take off there. Disconnect fuel on, the tank is off. You want to take this breather hose off first before you get all the bolts out of the valve cover, because if it's been on there a long time, it's going to be hard to get off, and if the valve cover's loose, it'll be really hard to wiggle off of it. We were just in a hurry because we were racing the weather.
Do this before you take those bolts loose.
Yeah.
Okay.
Be sure to put your valve cover bolts someplace clean, like that compartment right there. You don't want to get oil, you can just put a towel in it. Okay. May have just used loosen this wire retaining clip right here to get the valve cover. So the valve cover is just going to lift forward and slide out to one side. So the next thing is to take the side cover off to get to the flywheel. That way we can turn the engine by hand to get the valves in the correct position to adjust the clearance. You do have to take the gear shift lever off, and you have to remove the bolt or it won't slide off. So remove the bolt and just wiggle it. I'll put the bolt back in it just so you know where it is. And it'll take 8mm bolts to remove this cover. Dang, is it sitting on top dead center? So what's the chances of that, folks? It's practically sitting on top dead center.
Only you.
All right, on top dead center, I believe it's this side. Yeah, it's this side on T. It's top dead center, so you can adjust the valves on this side first. A lot of the Hondas had a really cool little plate with information on it, and this actually tells you your valve lash. Of course, it's in millimeters, but I converted it. It's basically 4 thousandths on the intake, and you can go 5 or 6 on the exhaust. It's right dead middle on 0.14. I would suggest going 6 because the exhaust gets hot and it can close up. So 4 and 6. You break the 10 millimeter nut loose and then use a flat blade screwdriver in that little slot on the valve adjustment. Let me get in here. And what you're looking for is you want that feeler gauge just to drag just a little bit, like it's just a hair bit too tight. Because when you tighten the lock nut down, it kind of pulls it up and frees it some. Is it there?
Mm-hmm.
So when you go to tighten it, you're going to want to hold steady the center with the screwdriver so it doesn't turn when you tighten it. Now check it again.
That's too tight now. Oh, there we go.
And another thing, if you feel that feeler gauge feels like it's going to get sandpaper, it's got a tooth snagging on it in there, that means that the top of the valve has pitted in, which is kind of common for these engines. And that's kind of a loose 4,000. You can hear it rubbing. The way to tell is if it feels like the floor is a little bit too loose, then go up to the next one, like to a 5,000, and see if it feels tight or if it'll even go in. Okay, so it needs 5 will go in, so you need to tighten it up just a little bit.
Probably had it right before.
Yeah, it's got to drag just a hair. It's too tight.
I'm gonna go somewhere between the two. Don't go down there. Go there.
Hang on, before you don't tighten it back down. Just now loosen it just a hair. Keep loosening it. Okay, now hang on. And just ever slightly tighten it. Okay, let go of it for a second. Tighten it just a hair bit more. Okay, well. This still needs a little bit more. Okay, back off. Well, hang on. Just a hair. Just I'm backing off. Now you can hear it. And that's what you should hear. Okay, now lock it down. Did you get loose?
No, I'm not in a position to grab.
All right, I need to lock it down. Hang on.
Let me just double check it one more time. It's a little bit too loose. You can hear it, so lock her down.
Run full turn and go around her.
No, I mean, you've already turned it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to do the other side, and what you do is you're going to rotate the magneto there. You're going to turn that flywheel one full turn back to the T. And one way you can tell is if you're watching the valves. So see, the exhaust valve is now opening. If you're not sure, the exhaust valves are in front where the exhaust pipes are. Intake valves from the back with the carburetor. Those are intakes, and the front one's exhaust. So we've watched the exhaust valve go down, so now the intake valves on the other cylinder we haven't done yet, it's going down, which means it's breathing in air. Now it's coming up on its compression stroke about right now. As you see, the T is coming up right there again. So if you're on it, you're gonna have to probably pay attention to your valves, how they are in position when you're turning it, if you're not for sure. And you need to kind of understand how four-stroke engines work. The way a four-stroke engine works is the engine's turning, it'll suck air in, so the intake valve's open to suck air and fuel in. Then it comes up on a compression stroke and the spark plug fires, throws the piston down. Then the pistons come back up and the exhaust valve opens and lets the exhaust out of the exhaust pipe. And then it starts the whole cycle all back over again. So now we're marked on the T and we're ready to do the other side. Listen to that one valve you wiggled, it sounds like it's pretty loose.
You wanted to.
Yeah, listen. See, that's too loose. You shouldn't, even if it's off a little bit, it shouldn't be rattling. So when you're hearing your engine rattle and you do that, you probably got a messed up valve or a out of whack adjustment. Then make sure you adjust the valves the same as the other side. Don't do one adjustment on one side and a different one on the other. And you can see the 006, 0.006, that's 6,000ths of an inch. Yeah, I think so. As you can see, it just has just a little bit of resistance where it almost buckles the feeler gauge. If you don't hear it squeaking, then that's about, you know, it's going to have a little bit of a tight feel to be the 6,000ths, whatever. Okay, I hear it's just slightly, so I can feel it and kind of hear it squeaking, so that's perfect where it is. Once that nut's bottomed, you can't, that's it. That's it, 6,000ths. While you're adjusting the valves, you can tighten up the chain. The book calls for setting this thing up on the center stand, getting it level, starting it up, let it run until it's warm, and then you break that nut loose right there and let it keep it in idle, and it'll adjust itself out and take up the free play. However, you can take the nut loose down there, turn the flywheel counterclockwise this way. I'm going to go that way with it. And you'll watch where that screwdriver is. You'll see a little, it looks like a plastic piece down there. You can see it moving around a little bit when you move it. You just push down on it lightly with the screwdriver or something, and then while you're holding it down, tighten that nut up right there, and that should take up with the free play in your timing chain. Yeah, just stick it on the head. That way you don't take a chance of breaking it. You just need to ensure that that gasket is like this all the way around, level with the valve covering up in the slot. And you'll probably be able to tell when you tighten it down if it's starting to wobble around or cock, then the gasket's probably not set in there straight.
Special Honda screws.
Now that rubber gasket that's on the bolt kind of is what centers up the valve cover onto the head. So if those are bad, it won't center correctly. Yeah, I don't, tight, snug, tight. Well, I mean, it's gotta be a little bit tight. Actually, I think the shoulder bottom's out. It had a big shoulder on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these bolts have a shoulder on them, so they just tighten down until they stop. And then you probably don't want to turn it more than about 4 or 5 foot-pounds. I'll put the specs down in the description. And hook up your hoses. They can be stubborn. About the same stubborn as coming off. That was stubborn too, getting off. And I can put the side cover back on. Remember, folks, your gear shift lever goes right through it. So. Yeah, that's it. Just make sure it's, okay, it'll clear it. Of course, if you're not sure, then you can always sit on the bike and see how it feels. You can adjust it to what feels best with your foot. Don't forget to put your little clip back on, your wire retainer clip on this side. As a tip, if you always put your parts in one spot and you're putting things back together and you still have parts left or bolts, then you know you've missed something somewhere. Now it's tank time. There's no way to get in there to see how you can. You're looking to get those slots right on those rubber grommets. Stick the 12mm bolt back in. If your fuel line had a spring to protect it and this fell off, be sure to put it back on. You know, it might be easier to put that little ring, that clamp back on it first. Sounds a lot better.
I always adjust the valves 4 and 6. 4 thousandths on the intake, and 6 thousandths on the exhaust. Sometimes I think the specs are like from 5 to 7 on the exhaust. I don't try to get it too tight because they can get, depends on how your conditions, how you ride. 6 thousandths is about the perfect spec for it. And then on the intake, and it seems like for some reason it's on the intake, on the intake itself, between like I'm thinking somewhere in the mid 80s, like 84 to 87, they started making the valves out of a softer compound or changed the compound, and the actual adjuster beats into the valve and concaves it out. And when you're putting a feeler gauge in there, you can feel how rough, like sandpaper, it is. And if that's the case, you can remove the rocker arm assembly and you can use a hobby tool and smooth it back out. However, it's going to continue to keep doing that. It's just because the valve composition is just weak, and eventually you'll have to have the valve replaced. But if you do run into that, that is one way you can do that. So I hope you found this video helpful. And if you have any questions, or if you have any tips on or experience adjusting valves and you think you got a better way, be sure to leave me a comment. I'm always interested. I'm always open to new ideas. But if you did find this video helpful and the information was good, be sure to like and subscribe, and always check back because I'm always working on something crazy. See you in the next one.